Welcome back to the Global Impact Forum here at Uniting Business Live. I hope you were able to connect with at least some of the more than 10,000 attendees and engage with the 15 content studios during the break. Now, as we continue to dig into methods of implementing the SDGs, we'd like to focus specifically on how the global goals are being implemented by companies in a world post-COVID. The COVID-19 pandemic has altered all aspects of our world, and it's clear that the SDGs are more important now than ever as we build back better. In this next panel, we will hear from 3 corporate leaders on their business strategies and initiatives that will support the sustainable rebuild. Please welcome Christine and Tim, Chief Marketing Officer from the Global Startup Ecosystem.
It's so exciting to welcome you to this amazing panel session where we're going to talk about SDG implementation and hear from some corporate influencers that's going to provide really amazing insights, especially during this pertinent time. Now, as stated before, during this conversation, we're going to be talking about corporate strategy, post-COVID related activities of impact. And I'm so excited to welcome this amazing panel of guests that I will be introducing to you for this session. So as stated before, my name is Christine and Tim. I'm the CMO of the Global Startup Ecosystem. And please join me on a warm and exciting welcome with our panelist guests. I first would like to briefly introduce James Quincy, the chairman and CEO of the Coca-Cola Company. Please give a warm virtual round of applause to our first panelist and guest, everyone. Followed by Jose Manuel, chairman and CEO of Acciona. Please give him also a warm welcome on the virtual feed. And last but not least, please give a warm and heartfelt welcome to Clara Arpa, the Chief Executive Officer of Arpa Equipos de Campaña. Please give all 3 panelist guests their amazing welcomes. Of course, you already have their resume and bio, so I won't discuss and read their entire journey of amazing contributions. We're going to dive right into discussion so we can have a fruitful and timely conversation. And the first person I would like to address for this question is James Quincy. Welcome. I know you are the CEO and Chairman of Coca-Cola. So welcome to this amazing panel discussion from the UN Global Compact. It's a pleasure to see you. And the first question here, just to give a bit of context, I'm sure you're aware, in 2015, the SDGs were implemented and adopted as a blueprint for a sustainable world. Now, as we could tell, it's now needed more than ever. So my first question to you, James Quincy, is please share with us, how do you incorporate SDGs in your current corporate strategy at Coca-Cola? And how has this evolved since COVID-19? Welcome, and we look forward to your response.
Yes, hello, and thanks for that. Thanks for the intro, and let me jump straight into the question. Obviously, those 17 SDGs and their 169 targets really are an important framework for companies to rally around as we address a whole array of complex and interrelated global issues. In fact, they really do serve as a great global roadmap for all the stakeholders, the government, civil society, and business to understand how we each can contribute and map our actions to the SDGs in our annual business and sustainability reports. Obviously, we recognize we can't achieve any one of these SDGs alone. No one can. And yet, as a global company with a wide supply chain and consumer reach, we do have a significant role to play in meeting many of these ambitious aims. So we've taken a closer look at where we can make direct contributions to SDGs, whether through collaboration with our partners, our industry peers, supplier engagement, or in other places where we have leverage to amplify our positive impacts. And as we mentioned, COVID and how we're evolving everything in this, we went back and we've actually, interestingly, we looked at all previous crises over the last 130 so years the company's been around, whether they were military or economic or pandemic. And one of the important features to consider is by the time the world gets back to pre-COVID state, so to speak, at least economically, will we be behind or ahead as a company in the business and in sustainability? Do we have better business fundamentals, better sustainability outcomes, better engagement? Are we stronger? And so that's the kind of North Star we set ourselves, that by the time COVID is back to even from where we were before, we want to have been stronger in business and delivering on sustainability. So a bit as the business leaders' sustainability statement released earlier, a key pillar to action was around really demonstrating the ethical leadership and good governance. And so while our progress is being impacted by COVID, our goals and our focus on delivery has not wavered at all. And for example, I'll throw out a few examples. I'll go in SDG order because this is a kind of a special language in and of itself. On water leadership, which is number 6, we aim to really measurably improve water security through regenerative water use, watershed health, and community access. Empowerment, which is number 10, reducing inequalities. We will have empowered 5 million women by the end of 2020 by leveraging women's connections to our local supply chains and distribution system around the world. Packaging, which is number 12 on responsible consumption and number 14 on life below the water. We aim to help build a world without waste by ensuring our packaging is not just recyclable, but it's collected and fully recycled. On climate, which is number 13, we aim to achieve our 2030 science-based climate target of 25% greenhouse reduction by reducing our energy needs and increasing our renewables, which is in line with the centigrade objective. And then on agriculture, which is 14, life on land, we aim to source priority agricultural ingredients sustainably. So with regard to the evolution of our strategy, quite frankly, we just kept going. And to just dive down on a couple of examples, water, which is obviously essential to our products, we have a responsibility to lead by protecting local water sources, promoting responsible water use, helping to ensure access to clean water. We're working in our own operations across the value chain and across watersheds. And to date, for example, our partnerships with WASH have provided more than 10.6 million people with access to clean water since 2020. And as we work through the pandemic, we're also ensuring a real focus on some of the other water-stressed areas and communities. A couple of examples. This week, we were pleased to join with WaterAid, the Water Resilience Coalition, UN Global Compact, and other partners, including Cargill, Diageo, and Heineken, to support urgent and collective efforts to propel access to clean water to the top of the corporate agenda. And yesterday, the Business for Nature collaboration platform launched a call to action for nature, which we were part of, bringing together major organizations and corporations like COFCO, Unilever, Walmart, the World Economic Forum, and WEF, WWF, to call for greater action on nature, really focused on healthy societies, protecting nature, and really focused on natural resources. And then last but by no means least, it has to be said, given that today is the 22nd of September, on this day in 1862 was the day that President Abraham Lincoln announced the Emancipation Proclamation, setting free the 3 million slaves formerly in the US. And I think that's a good moment to talk about social justice. Our need to address the systemic racism is not going to go away, and businesses have to step up to the plate. And as a company that really believes in diversity and inclusion, and it's really among our greatest strengths, we are putting in place resources and energy towards helping end systemic racism, focusing on our efforts on 4 areas: listening, leading, investing, and advocating. Some recent actions, we committed to spend another $500 million with Black-owned businesses over the next 5 years in the US, and this is on top of our objective of $1 billion with diverse suppliers by 2020. And we joined with a number of other corporate leaders to promote legislation, for example, the hate crimes bill in our home state of Georgia in the US. So our pledge as a company is that we're really going to do our part to listen and learn and act. And we are committed to making a difference across our communities and within our company by mobilizing our history of advancing civil rights and by rallying the strength of our employees, families, and friends. Thank you.
James, I really appreciate the depth that you shared with us, not only the examples you provided with the SDG goals, but as a recognizable beverage company, you guys have obviously been extremely active. And thank you for citing those SDG examples and correlating that so we can see the range of things that matter to Coca-Cola at the community level, whether it's waste management, packaging, environmental concerns, even community level discourse around justice. Thank you so much for sharing that. And of course, we will follow up with that on the second round of questions because I bet there was a lot of engagement on some of the examples you cited. And with that, I wanted to continue on to Jose. You know, especially with Acciona, you've been coming up with large scale recovery strategies for your company at the corporate level. But how does that translate down through your supply chain, or better yet, your local communities, maybe at the employee level within the organization? Can you share with us, Jose, examples of corporate leadership that you have shared during this COVID-19 pandemic in terms of making an impact with SDG goals and sustainable activities?
Oh, thank you, Christine. Thank you all. Let me first go on a minute about what we do for a living. We're an infrastructure company, and being an infrastructure company is something kind of wide as a concept. But for us, far before the SDGs were actually put in the table, we were focused in developing those SDGs which were called SDGs later on in 2015, but far before, we were developing renewable energy, we were developing water infrastructure, transport infrastructure, all sorts of waste infrastructures that would then habilitate all other SDGs. Because to be totally honest, if you don't have water, it's very difficult to have education, or it's very difficult to allow for health. All other SDGs, which are in many ways a condition necessary for which is are some of the, in particular, 6, 7, 11 SDG on water, SDG on clean energy, in infrastructure in general, sustainable cities. So that's what we do for a living: develop these infrastructures. When we go to how we've managed over COVID, it's interesting that for us the situation hasn't changed after COVID. If anything, what has come to become, I think, a reality for most of our stakeholders is the necessity for a rapid development of necessary infrastructures. In many of our countries, what we've actually had to do is supply our customers, many of them public entities, with a whole list of new projects that they needed to implement fast in order, in many cases, to substitute private demand or the lack of private demand, in order to achieve the objectives that they were going to achieve, say, in 20-year plan, to achieve in 5 years, because the reality is now, as you all know, as we all are aware, different than it was a few months ago. Now, on how we've coped with the situation in particular cases, I mean, this in a global company, as you can imagine, you have to be very local. So it depends in which situation, in which country. For example, in testing, we've done tens of thousands of tests around the world, but there are countries, for example, where you're not allowed to test privately. So you have to address a completely different strategy in protecting your employees. Or countries where your telecommunication infrastructure is not available. So the whole thing is very crafty. I must say there is a philosophy underlying the whole thing, of course, like we all in every company, which is protecting our employees above all and trying to continue with our work to the extent possible, which we've managed. We had a few months of difficulties at the beginning, a couple of months of difficulties, but immediately we managed to recover our normal activity. So yes, I mean it's been challenging, but on the other hand, I think the reality in the future years is there going to be a great deal of acceleration in investment in necessary infrastructure, habilitating infrastructure for achieving SDGs.
Amazing, Jose. And I saw that you kicked off a little bit of a debate there regarding the importance of water over the other SDG goals. Like, you know, without water, it really impacts the other SDGs. So we'll come back to that debate a little bit later for sure. But thank you for addressing some of the practical challenges also at the corporate level that Acciona was able to overcome in implementing many of these social impact activities within your community. And so with that, you know, I want to pass it over to Clara Arpa. I wanted to engage with you as well. A similar question, but mainly just citing examples of initiatives that you feel like you implemented locally, and how have they been tailored or adjusted or even changed because of COVID-19?
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for this invitation. And it's my opportunity to congratulate the family of the United Nations for its 75th anniversary. Well, first of all, I think that, in my opinion, is unfortunately, I can't talk about post-COVID, but in COVID, at least is my opinion, because here in Spain, we have still in the middle of the tsunami. We are just, again, under the wave. Our healthcare system has been pulled very, very, very hard, and the situation is quite tough. The economy is still struggling, and there are strategic sectors especially affected like tourism. So we have still in COVID, but when it came, the response from the local industry, ARPA included, we have supported the local administration, the regional administration, and the national administration. We have produced in more than 50,000 masks when it was impossible to get them from the normal market through the normal chain and chain of suppliers. And we have been during several weeks really working very hard. We have supported nursing homes, hospital, fire departments, police. We have built in 15 days 400 beds filled hospital with the support of more than at least 50 local suppliers. We have provided and installing infrastructures now at the schools in a record time to allow them to increase the pupils ratio by classrooms. During this process, we have also supported the administration and the healthcare system to provide themselves of protective equipment. And also we have to be sure that we have done in the most effective and the most sustainable way. We are, for example, a metal industry, and all that we have manufactured during this crisis by ourselves with the help of others companies, suppliers, has been in a factory that in that moment is zero emission of CO2. So we have been really very close to our sustainable business strategy, and we have tried as hard as possible to follow, to be aligned with the sustainable way to produce and to respond to this crisis here with all our local industry.
Amazing. And you shared such a diversity of activities that your company has been a part of, from nurses to schools to providing PPE equipment. It's amazing the variety of activities at the local level that you're involved in. And I think, now passing it over to continue on the dialogue, each one of you gave amazing examples of how you implemented really intense impact strategies at the local level within your communities, even in activities that's not core to either your brand from a industry perspective or from a brand. And so the second round of questions, I would love to engage each of you now on specific examples on how can we learn from your institutions? How can we implement? Because many corporate companies are models of success from many institutions, government sectors, startups, or ecosystem enablers. So I want to go back to James Quincy with this second question regarding examples that you may have in terms of the recovery strategies, because you showed us the phenomenal lineup of SDG goals that you're tackling at Coca-Cola. Can you share with us how these strategies have been translated to your local communities? What examples or initiatives do you feel are most successful now? And give us an insight as to why do you think Coca-Cola was successful in doing some of the strategies that you implemented during this pandemic? Because obviously, again, many stakeholders are following your lead in leadership during this time. So looking forward to hearing your insights on this, James.
Sure. Let me perhaps use an example because you used the word recovery in the question to talk about plastic waste. At the end of the day, to bring a strategy to life, in order to be able to do justice to our business, to our employees, the community, and the environment in which we operate and serve, we need to drive our networked organization that is capable of experimenting, capable of connecting to local opportunity, and capable of sharing learnings and really driving scale on the biggest opportunities regionally or globally. And we know there's going to be a global reprioritization of resources by governments as a part of what is going to be left after COVID. And there's going to be an opportunity for initiatives that support the SDGs to be accelerated. And this is because several of the initiatives that improve SDG outcomes are also compatible with more jobs. Sustainability initiatives may seem as though they'll be harder to achieve in an economic recession. That's not necessarily the case, especially those ones that drive a lot of jobs. And we need to keep going, and we need to partner to drive scale on those ones. So let me give you an example. I mentioned packaging. Coca-Cola Company, we have a strategy called the World Without Waste, which I mentioned in the other question, which is essentially we want to collect a bottle or can for everyone we sell and fully recycle it back into packaging. And because that packaging material has value and we need to capture it. And so the sorts of innovations we've had to get over because of COVID, given that it's impacting the way we can collect, we've had to look at how we set up recycling facilities. So, in a period of very low oil prices, which makes virgin plastic cheaper than recycled plastic, we've continued to work with our suppliers and partners across the world to drive the increased availability of recycled PET plastic. For example, our Thai-based partner Indorama has committed to invest $1.5 billion in recycling initiatives over the next 5 years. In March of this year, full pandemia, Coke Beverages Philippines signed an agreement with Indorama to establish Pet Value, the largest bottle-to-bottle recycling facility in the Philippines, able to process 2 billion plastic bottles per year. And our partners like Indorama are investing alongside us to continue to build this circular economy, even during the pandemic. And another piece of that is innovation. And with SDGs, financing innovation is often a core part of it. And together with some industry colleagues like Danone and Pepsi and Unilever and others, we were inaugural investors in Circulate Capital, an investment firm dedicated to financing companies, infrastructure, and innovation that prevent the flow of plastic into the world's oceans. The fund has now raised over $100 million and have announced their first 2 investments in April this year, again, during the pandemic. One supporting a company in India, turning difficult to manage flexible plastics into high quality recycled plastic granules. And another one supporting a female-led company in Indonesia, specializing in recycling PET bottles into recycled PET flakes, which are then used to make other packaging and textiles. So it absolutely is possible to continue to pursue these sustainability and business objectives and to work within the consequences of COVID. So hopefully those examples helped.
And scale, like how to really look at a new change and how we prioritize our impact. And with the interest of time, I'm going to transition right into Jose here. Similar question, just providing us your strategy, insights as how are you able to implement, you say you're an infrastructure company at Acciona. Just share with us any partners you work with, any unique strategies that you would like to share with the audience today as to how you were successful during this pandemic.
Well, let me just start by saying that in every SDG, there is a business opportunity. And that's essential for every company to look at. Where is my business opportunity? Where do I have a competitive edge in any of the biggest challenges of society of our time? So that would be my first recommendation. And the example that I've been using for decades now, the company's been using for decades in finding where the business opportunities are. Then I'd say align your stakeholders, in particular your suppliers. I mean, you have to, no company can work appropriately and effectively without full alignment of suppliers. So make it a unit. Make yourself a unit with your suppliers and defining how you're going to solve your own challenges. Variable compensation. Assign a piece of variable compensation to the achievement of SDGs, to sustainability goals in your own company. That's it's proven to be extremely useful for us because it aligns everyone. I mean, some people may feel that SDGs are important, but of course, there are opinions for everyone. If you align compensation, that reminds where the priorities are. And that works beautifully. And then examples, and this particular specific examples of ideas that have really contributed. For example, right now, we're in a process in the Middle East of renewing all the desalination plants aligned with renewable power supply. All the desalination capacity in the Middle East, which is a big part of the water supply, was based on evaporation techniques, which is very electricity, very high energy consuming. We're now substituting all that with reverse osmosis, which is a huge challenge because it requires an enormous investment, but it's an investment that at the same time is rebooting the economy and jump-starting. Like that, there are a number of other cases in the world where the infrastructure needs to be replaced and you need to come up with the technology and the ideas and supply your customers with the ideas in order to have them act and have them implement their policies. So there's plenty of work to do there.
Thank you so much for sharing. And again, I would like to pass it over to Clara to any quick remarks on who are you engaging locally, your stakeholders, and how are you successful with the examples that you shared with us earlier before we close out.
Well, I would like to add a last reflection that I would like to say that beyond COVID, no real achievement concerning sustainability, economic transformation, growth, or inclusion will be possible without accountability. Accountability about private sector, but also the public administration and institutions. It is very difficult to align our strategies if there is no accountability. And I submit to the public institutions that without accountability on the management of the public resources, is very difficult to get it. So that should be my last reflection.
Clara, amazing. Thank you so much. And I'll close by saying that it was truly amazing to have all of you engaged on this SDG implementation post-COVID-19. What was amazing is obviously, again, to reiterate, many of you are not only corporate executives of powerful organizations within your community, but you highlighted today so many examples of what you're doing to implement and really impact your local communities. I think it was a powerful message also from each one of you. I'll start with James here on this conversation regarding a reorder of prioritization, how we engage when it comes to impact initiatives at a global level, and the power of experimentation. I'm sure at Coca-Cola, with brand value, is very hard to just dive right in, but you went for it. And it's very honorable to see how you're diving into your community. Jose, you talked about every SDG, there is a business opportunity, a powerful message for us to look at these SDG goals as not a thought item, but a practical opportunity for businesses to scale. And Clara, you showcased so many amazing initiatives that you're doing at the local level, even beyond your company's core initiatives. And we are so grateful to hear those examples you shared with us today. So with that, I want to thank everyone for joining this amazing panel discussion. Please give a warm round of applause to our panelists: James Quincy, the Chairman and CEO of Coca-Cola Company; Jose Manuel, Chairman and CEO of Acciona; and Clara Arpa, the Chief Executive Officer of ARPA Moviles de Campaña. It was amazing to have a thought leadership discussion on SDG goals implementation and COVID-19 and the impact you've been making in your communities. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, now we're going to hear from companies that have committed to setting ambitious science-based targets and will share their experiences from driving a transformation of their businesses to deliver on a 1.5 degrees Celsius future. This fireside chat will focus on how committed business leaders at the country level can help mobilize additional climate champions within the business community, and how, through responsible policy engagement and advocacy vis-à-vis national and regional governments, they can contribute to the creation of ambition loops in which private sector leadership and bold public policies reinforce each other.